Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inner Sanctums YouTube channel. Today, we are previewing the NPL New South Wales Men's Grand Final, and I thought who better to join me than a couple of Football New South Wales veterans, and indeed veterans of the footballing world. Noted Manly United fan Chris Curulli and noted Blacktown City fan Eric Subijano. Eric, how are you this evening?
I am doing great. Thanks so much, Stephen. Good to see you, Chris. And we're looking forward to getting on the call together on Saturday for two games.
Well, you got that clutch. You got that plug in pretty early.
Yeah,
No
like,
messing around.
yeah, of course. Actually, I had to do this pesky thing and called work and finish that day, and then I was like straight onto the self promotion as always.
Didn't take long. Right on brand. Yes, it is incredibly on brand for Eric Subiano. Chris, how are you this evening?
Yeah, good, Stephen. Thanks for having me on. Look forward to chatting NPL. One of my favorite things to do.
Is there anything you don't enjoy doing when it comes to football? You're everywhere. It's fantastic and it's amazing. So yes, as I said, we are going to talk about the NPL New South Wales Men's Grand Final this weekend between Manly United and Blacktown City. That will be at the Western Sydney Stadium in Parramatta. CommBank Stadium for commercial reasons, but I'm very much like the ABC and I prefer just to use the ground's name.
Yes.
There will be the two games going on. The under-20s that kicks off at 2:30 between Sydney FC and Mount Druitt, and then at 6 p.m. it is the big dance. It is Blacktown versus Manly, and as Eric mentioned, him and Chris will be on the call for that game on Clutch Radio. So I think they'll both be able to keep each other in check, regardless of which way the game actually goes.
Yes.
Chris, we'll start with you. How did Manly actually get here? Like, in terms of from that final week of the season to the grand final this weekend?
You know what, Stephen? That's a very good question. I'm not sure a lot of people still can believe how they got there. Pretty remarkable, to say the least. I mean, yeah, if you want me to briefly run through it and start from the final day of the season, it was an epic, and Manly started that day in third. Blacktown started that day on top. It would be Blacktown who finished third, Manly second, just the one goal of goal difference splitting them and Sydney Olympic, who of course defeated Blacktown that day, although Blacktown got their revenge on the weekend, as I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, so Manly ended up second. They did lead the competition for a good few weeks throughout the season, but in the end had to settle for second. Still a very solid result for a team that hadn't played finals football since 2017. In 2017, they went on a pretty remarkable run. They defeated Blacktown in regulation time in their first final, and then following that point, it took two penalty shootouts to win the competition, and they had one, but the other game was also quite remarkable. So starting with their first week of the finals, when it was the qualifying final, second versus third, went to extra time at Cromer Park. Glorious day there. I was watching on from the far post. It was great scenes to watch. 0-0 after regulation time. Worth noting that those two teams had met about a month earlier at Cromer Park. I was on the call that day when Blacktown defeated Manly by 6-1. But it went back to script. The two teams with the best defences in the competition. Manly conceded 24 during the season, Blacktown 25. So it was 0-0. Mitch Malia scored a screamer. Blacktown looked like they were going through, especially after Christian Santich was shown a red card. But then someone by the name of Alan Aganovich, a former Blacktown player, you know what to say here, Eric, popped up and scored not one but two goals deep into extra time, 119th, 123rd minute, sent that game, well, not to penalties, but sent Manly through within a game of the grand final. When what did they do? Well, they were 1-0 down to Sydney Olympic at the end of extra time. Guess what? Popped up, set piece goal. Bruno Mendes scoring that one to send it to penalties, and then a pretty incredible shootout as well at Belmore. Manly were 3-1 down in that shootout, came back, defeated Olympic, booked their spot in this grand final with a very important week off for the squad to recover and go again against a familiar foe this season. They'll play Blacktown for the fourth time. I took a while there, but as you've seen, there's been a bit going on, so hopefully that was a decent summary of it.
Yes, there has been a lot going on. Two 120-minute plus performances from Manly required. And Eric, I'll ask the same of you. How have Blacktown gotten here? How was it that last day of the season? The absolute heartbreak. All Blacktown needed was a point, and it was unfortunate that things played out the way they did, wasn't it?
It was unfortunate. Firstly, big shout out to Football New South Wales media manager Mark Stavroulakis for his continued protection of my mental state by sending me anywhere for commentary but where Blacktown are playing. So yes. Firstly, a game at Belmore Sports Ground where I think they just didn't turn up. So credit to Olympic, they did what they needed to secure the premiership. So I think yeah. Ah, yes, that's right. I remember now. I was like, just do a quick refresher of the memory. So a couple of goals from Cork's second best footballer, Roy O'Donovan, was what sealed the premiership for Sydney Olympic. And then that basically that combined with the Manly victory against Rockdale condemned is not the right word. It's not that bad, but it meant Blacktown had to play away. So we know what happened next. Chris has covered that very well. And so as I go on one of my many tangents, after those two games, coincidence had it that I was calling Bankstown City women's games both times. Bankstown City women's coach Matt Costantini actually does some coaching at Hill Sports High School with Mark Crittenden. So after the first game, we're chatting. I'm chatting to Matt, and I said, "Oh, Blacktown lost," and he's like, "Man, Critter's going to be spewing." And then the second game, which coincidentally was at the Arctic Circle, because that is what we call Christie Park, the Arctic Circle. There is no other name for it.
It's also the only ground in Sydney with that name, and there will be no other grounds called by that name.
No other grounds, and do not talk to me about Canberra or Bathurst because that is cheating. Now, so then I had a chat to Matt, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, I told him, I summed up what Chris said. So they were winning. They scored in the second half of extra time. Then Manly went down to 10 players, and then Manly scored twice. And he was like, man, Critter will be spewing. And I was thinking, I had this conversation last week. but yeah, so after that, I kind of, gotten through the 5 stages of grief and gotten all the way to acceptance. And then Blacktown just continuing to defy expectations by, a reasonably convincing performance against Apia. I mean, as convincing as any finals performance can be against another strong team. I like what Mark Crittenden did is Mitch Malia scored, looking good, but he took him off at halftime for Jordan Smiley, who then scored within 5 minutes of coming on. So Crittenden, super coach as always. We'll get to that in a bit, but actually I'll just drop the stat now. He's never finished outside the top half, and he's been the coach since 2011. So that was that. And then that on to, so the victory against Apia in the do or die minor semi-final took us to a rematch at Belmore against Olympic, and Olympic, that's rough news for them to lose 2 penalty shootouts at home in consecutive weekends. But that is what happened. The goals came early this time, which hasn't been often in this final series, but the Futsalroo Grant Lynch opened the scoring for Blacktown City. Roy O'Donovan equalised 5 minutes later. That was all in the first 15 minutes. And then it just, like a classic heavyweight bout, it's trading blows. No one lands the knockout punch all the way to penalties. And it was interesting to note, we might get onto this, Blacktown's squad depth could be a big thing here. I noted 2 of the substitutes that day, Danny Choi and Dakota Askew, were successful from the spot. And also Olympic got all the way up to their 5th penalty taker. I think it was Ben Van Moors, but Dylan Niski was able to make the save. And there was the pitch invasion, which I would definitely have joined in if I was there. But that's how it through to the grand final. One last thing, we've gotten used to Alex Robinson being in goal. I think he's still a teenager. He's received a call up to a young Socceroos camp, but Blacktown getting the job done with another goalkeeper, Dylan Niski, who would be if you consider Tristan Prendergast to be the number 1. Dylan is the number 3, but he stepped up when necessary. Other players like another youngster, Tyron Burney, has stepped up in this final series after barely playing during the regular season. So, it's all setting up to be a great game because Blacktown's deep, just like Manly is.
Yeah, no, squad depth is definitely going to be a critical part of this fixture, particularly if it goes the full 120 minutes. And based on this NPL New South Wales final series so far, that I would imagine there's probably going to be close to the odds-on favourite at the moment. Because there's just been extra time absolutely everywhere. Eric, I'll stick with you for a second. As a Blacktown fan, you mentioned that Mark Stavroulakis has sent you everywhere else,
Mhm.
but where Blacktown are playing
Mhm.
for the last few weeks.
Mhm.
What's it been like as a fan when you're done with your commentary duties, knowing what's happened, and like, I guess, how have you been feeling as a fan after that?
It's been the kind of the separation. It's really flattened out the emotional roller coaster, but it's always kind of the first thing I want to check once I'm done is how did things play out, what were the key moments, etc. So standard finals football, like it's not that hard to imagine us losing any of the finals games that Blacktown ended up winning. But that's finals football. That's why we love it. So it's hard to say. Like it's easy. It's easy, as I mentioned, the squad depth to talk about reasons why Blacktown can win this game. But that's the same for Manly. So there'll be plenty for us to talk about on Saturday.
Yes, there will be indeed. And Chris, same question to you. What's it been like dealing with the roller coaster of emotions over these last few weeks with all the performances from Manly, particularly the extra times?
Yeah, it's been interesting for me. Like, I guess I have that fan element to me, but having now worked in football and worked around the NPL as a commentator for the last few years, you kind of try to distance yourself in a way from being that shameless fan and trying to just view football for the spectacle that it is. But fortunately enough, Manly's games have delivered that either way. And I did have the chance to sit there with the punters down at the wonderful far post, as I mentioned earlier, Manly's new bar that opened up the deck out to the Cromer Park pitch. Great setup, and as the sun set over Cromer Park, there's nowhere else you would have rather have been, as those scenes were sparked late in those last that game against Blacktown. And yeah, it's been unbelievable. Like Manly are a club that every time they're up that top end of the table, probably feel they're overachieving a bit. They're a team with smaller budgets than others. And to be fair, Blacktown are similar in some ways, but Manly, yeah, they've really put an emphasis on developing youth and I guess finding diamonds in the rough in terms of their signings. And under Adam Griffiths this year, it's come through. They were up there last year as well before COVID stopped the season. And yeah, this year there's something special about Cromer Park when Manly are a successful club and doing well. And since 2017, which was kind of my first year really involved in the comp, working for Manly back when they went on that run to win the comp, back then it's that feeling again. It's just like this team shouldn't be achieving what they are achieving, but they've found a way, and it's pretty remarkable. And no matter what happens on the weekend, it's going to be a season that the whole Northern Beaches football community looks back on favourably. And yeah, who knows? This team, they're young, and if they can stick together, should hopefully be successful in the years to come. But either way, yeah, there's a real buzz in the whole Northern Beaches from how the team have gone. Like, I have people in my local team talking to me about Manly United, or even people from all over Sydney, in the Football Australia offices that would previously have not noticed a club like Manly. There's a bit of chatter. So yeah, good to see.
That is definitely good to hear. This is going to be the last grand final for a while because Football New South Wales is moving away from the final system and they are moving to first past the post with a full home and away season because of expanding the competitions. The NPL Men's expanding to 16 teams. Chris, what would it mean for Manly United fans to win the final grand final?
It would be huge because, as we say, as things stand this year, this is the championship on the line. The premiership on the last day of the season would have been epic. It would have been an awesome achievement. The club haven't achieved that in over 20 years, where they did win a championship 5 years ago. It still would be a huge achievement. As I said, Manly, a club that are competing against teams with sizable budgets. In a way, that lottery of a finals series probably has paid in. It's played into their hands. They would fancy themselves. They're a club that look to get in the five and do something from there. And that obviously won't be in the picture from next season. So in a way, it's a real chance at silverware where it's going to get much harder in the years to come, just naturally, as there'll be one trophy on the line, not two. But yeah, considering that factor, it just adds even more to the importance of this game.
And Eric, the same question to you.
Same question. Firstly, before I get onto that, yeah, with the reduction in trophies, I really hope they make a bigger deal of the Waratah Cup next year, because that's still a trophy, of course, won by our friends at the Arctic Circle, Northwest Sydney Spirits. Also doing something similar to what Chris has talked about with Manly. They certainly don't have Sydney United's budget, but they did such a great job throughout all their cup games. So yes, it'd be the trophy, the last ever grand final trophy would be the perfect time to, the perfect thing to show in Blacktown's corporate area, along with many other things. All those photos of old teams, like jerseys from former players like ex-Blacktown City player Scott Jamieson. He gave us a Sydney FC jersey, stuff like that. But it's going to be difficult. Blacktown has such a tradition of success. If you go back to, how's the memory, 2016, 2014, 2010, 2007 grand finals. Those are, I think, the four most recent ones. And I think they're up there in terms of the most number of trophies won in New South Wales state comp. From memory, it's either Blacktown City or Sydney United. In that sense, it would be fitting if Blacktown City were to win the last one. But I mean, it's going to be something that should be proudly shown off by whoever wins it.
That is a very nice diplomatic answer there, Eric. I guess, as then I'll stick with you for a second. Are there any players that people should be keeping an eye on that don't necessarily jump out off the paper or the team sheet immediately? Like you've mentioned Alex Robinson, you've mentioned Danny Choi. Is there anyone else that should jump out that doesn't necessarily?
So I think this is defender appreciation time. So the three central defensive setup that Blacktown have used the whole season, and the three players in that have occupied those three roles for most of the season have been brilliant. So, of course, I mentioned Grant Lynch, very much a ball-playing centre-back, something we love to see. So he may even be Blacktown's most technically gifted player, and despite being on the left side of the back three, he's gonna make a number of threatening runs down the left side for sure as he helps out the Blacktown attack. Lachlan Campbell is in the center of that. I expect him to be in the center of the back three. He's not the biggest player, but is a really tough player. Actually, good leaps are a possible threat at set pieces, and always calm, does what you want at the backs, as does Daniel Collins, who we picked up a couple of years ago. I think he'd been overseas. He's come back. He's slotted in very well. I did say in a call earlier this season, Lynch, Campbell, and Collins, they're the most iconic trio since Destiny's Child, and so I think that that's how they've been. Like the major Choi, Malia, Jordan Smiley, they get the attention, but our defense is kind of the reason that we can get that our attacking players can do that kind of a job and have that kind of freedom, because there's such a solid foundation, which Mark Crittenden has been very big on ever since he's been a coach.
And Chris, I'll put the same question to you. Is there anyone that fans watching the game or perhaps listening on Clutch Radio should be keeping an eye on or an ear on if they are tuning into your radio call?
It's a silly answer, but it's almost the whole Manly team, because there's a lot of players in there that have gone under the radar and had outstanding seasons. For me, a player who's probably in contention for Player of the Year in the comp, while we're on the defender appreciation theme, is Jimmy Oates. He's had an unreal season for Manly United in the heart of defence. He was a huge reason why they had such a strong defensive record, even after that Blacktown game. Maybe it's symbolic that he scored a pretty unfortunate own goal in that 6-1 defeat, because he's been unreal. Like the way Manly's set up, he ends up one-on-one with defenders a lot of the time, and he wins that battle almost every time. I think the result at Cromer Park more recently was a lot down to the way he handled the likes of Travis Major. And he's also popped up with a few important goals. I believe he's got 4 to his name this season, and including won against Blacktown in the 3-1 defeat out at Blacktown earlier in the year. So Jimmy Oates is probably one. Like, seriously, he's played League Two and League One football over in England. So another player who's come back from overseas. He was a local junior, though. He started his journey at Manly United. He kind of embodies everything that the club's about. So seriously class in the heart of defence. And then you've kind of got those underrated figures all over the park. Alan Aganovich, who he's partnered. Even behind them, Jack Greenwood in goals, who signed for the club this season, a former Western Sydney Wanderers Academy goalkeeper, who has really impressed for a young goalkeeper as well. Probably won't have the shine or hasn't had the recognition of Alex Robinson because he's a few years older, but has been impressive for Manly after they lost a long-term goalkeeper in Dylan Mitchell a couple of years ago, who was the man who almost single-handedly won them the title back in 2017. And then throughout the team, the superstar is Sayya Kambayashi, the Japanese fullback turned number 10 this season. Another gem who was signed out of the Illawarra Premier League a couple of years ago, played the year at left back last year, was class, probably one of the best left backs in the comp. This year, the Manly staff were like, you know what, we'll turn him into a number 10 because he's so good technically and he's shown it. He's killed it this season. Didn't play the Olympic Games, so it'll be interesting to see if he comes back from injury in time. That will be a huge blow for Manly if he isn't. But if he is fit, big asset. And the last name I'll mention, because I am at risk of naming the whole team, is Bruno Mendes, who's been picked up came from Hakoah in Football in New South Wales League One, as it's now known. Great story, him, 3 or 4 years ago, he was playing local MWFA Premier League for Mossman in the area as a Brazilian who'd moved over, always lived on the Northern Beaches. There's a real Brazilian community in DY, which is right near Cromer. Probably always wanted to come back to Manly, made the move back after impressing for Hakoah. And while he was always a kind of strong attacking midfielder, sort of played all over the front line, Eric will want me to mention his futsal background. You can see it on display in the way he plays, and he's turned into that striker that Manly United have been missing. So I believe the stat is that no one from Manly scored more than 10 goals in a season since Dylan McAllister in 2017, which is when they won the competition. I've always said until this season that they haven't filled that void that McAllister vacated when he retired a year later, and Mendes has been the man. He's produced some great moments up until that equaliser against Olympic, or he also scored a great bicycle against Sutherland earlier in the season. He's got, he's broken that 10-goal mark, and he's been the difference for Manly. They've been lacking that striker who would fire them up to the table and in contention for a title, and that's been Bruno. So there's your comprehensive review of half the team, because I feel they're all pretty underrated. But it's been a remarkable turnaround compared to where the team were just a couple of seasons ago.
No, that's you want to shout out everyone that you can sometimes, and Eric chose the back line, and you've chosen half the squad in all different areas. Like, there's really no wrong answer. Eric,
come back to grand final.
Sorry, what was that?
They've made a grand final at the end of the day.
They have indeed. Eric, I'll come back to you for a second. What's going to be the key to victory for Blacktown on Saturday?
I think it links perfectly into how Chris ended. Stop Bruno Mendes. That would help. That would be very, very helpful. But that's easy to say, and it has been incredibly difficult to do this season. It's like trying to tackle a ghost. So if you haven't seen Bruno Mendes play this year, you will want to, because the close control, it's everything you expect when you describe him as a Brazilian with a futsal background. He's a big dude, but it's he had great feet for a big man, but not in the patronizing way. It's really like, what he does with the ball doesn't look like it should be possible at his height, but he does it so many times. And so many times Chris and I have both seen it looked like Bruno Mendes has no space, then a couple of brilliant touches, and it opens right up and he scores. So that's going to be crucial. Also, I think it's easy to laugh about the Blacktown 6-1 victory at Manly at Cromer Park, and God knows I did that for about the next 4 weeks. But that result is really like 10 or 15 mad minutes, and it's where Blacktown's had a flurry of goals, and it's not really reflective of anything from either team. So the Blacktown fans, I hope you enjoyed it, because I just don't think that is going to happen on Saturday. So it's going to be hard graft, and really in keeping with what Chris said about Jimmy Oates. Also, Alan Naganovich, who will have, once again, many things that he wants to do against his former club. It's a tough back line, and of course, because you mentioned futsal, shout out also to, I think, a player so underrated, Chris didn't mention him, Lucas Rainbird, I think one of the best young defenders in the competition. I'm glad to see him getting a run as a fullback for Manly. He's futsal teammates with Grant Lynch, so shout out to all the good folk at UTS Northside Futsal Club. And it's just, I think, I do wonder if I'm his good luck charm, because from memory, I've called 3 Manly United games, and he's been player of the match for 2 of them. That when Manly do their awards the next week. So if that is such a thing, then Blacktown will not get anything down his side of the field.
I'll jump in off the back of that quickly, because I almost did mention Rainbird. He's been an interesting one, because he's a young fullback who's sort of broken through, probably got thrown into the squad really early, at like say 16, 17. He made his debut in first grade. He spent a year playing at left back, even though he's right-footed. So there's a lot of cutting inside, but has really had to develop his game in that sense as well as a right-footed left back. Kieran Paul, who was been Manly's number 1 right back for years and one of the best right backs in the comp, has been injured the last few weeks. He's one of the few remaining from that 2017 comp, but he's been out for the season for a while. And even then, Rainbird stayed at left back because of how good of a job he's been doing, and Jesse Perez has slotted in there the last few weeks. So, yeah, I almost shouted him out, but I didn't want to name the entire squad, but there it is there.
And Eric, I'll come back to you for a second as well. What do you think is going to be the key to victory for Manly United?
Key to victory is, it's always been, if they can work the ball and move Blacktown around to create space for Bruno Mendes, Sayya Kambayashi, and Matt Sim, who I can't believe we haven't named up until this point, but Matt Sim's been brilliant as well. Their Manly season started with a Matt Sim winning goal at Belmore. It feels so long ago, but yeah, it was Matt Sim, and it was a really well taken goal. And there would be a nice symmetry to it if Matt Sim were to score in the grand final as well. But yeah, if Blacktown allows space for those 3, and especially if they allow space for 2 or all 3 of those players to combine, then it is big problems for Blacktown City. So on the flip side, looking at it from a Manly perspective, they've got to look at the movement of those 3 and the movement of others as well, because it's a team game, So I think Christian Santich would be back from suspension because it was only a 1-game ban. Is that right, Chris?
To be confirmed, to be honest. Depends.
Really? It's
a bit up in the air. I believe he'll be back, but
yeah, because I was looking at the match, and there are 2 yellow cards, which should be a 1-game ban. But Santich, there's other players like that. Then the deeper lying players, they have to be accurate with the passes into those 3, because if they let's keep it simple. The more that trio, Mendes, Kambayashi, and Sim get the ball, the more Manly's chances of winning.
And Chris, I'll put the same questions to you first. What's going to be the key to victory for Manly United?
Yeah, for Manly, it's tricky. Like, Blacktown's probably the team they didn't want to face in the final. If you look at who they've played and the results they've gotten against all the other contenders throughout the year, even that win in the finals a few weeks ago was so sort of miraculous in nature, and Manly will be the first to admit they didn't have the best game, but Blacktown didn't really have the best game either. And it was kind of, a well-deserved 0-0 heading into the last 10 minutes of that game. So it definitely depends what kind of Blacktown team turn up, because if we get the Blacktown from earlier in the season when they looked unstoppable, like at one point, just past the midway point of the season, it looked like they were going to run away with it, to be honest. They looked like that one team had that clear identity, were playing great football. It just brought back Travis Major. They were bringing back Danny Choi. And yeah, like they looked unstoppable, and they've been stopped the last few weeks. They found a way into the final because that's what Crito's teams always seem to do. But yeah, for Manly, so a lot of it does hinge on what Blacktown bring, but they do have to deal with that sort of difference in shape. Blacktown have that three at the back formation that they so famously play. But with those wing backs, I think that's very key. And this is probably going to answer your next question if you're asking me about Blacktown. But for me, the key battle is like the wing backs for Blacktown. They ran riot in those first couple of games between the two sides this season. It was Jackson Bandiera and Dakota Askew for those first couple of games. I think that changed for the final. I think one of them in Bandiera was out or started off the bench. But yeah, so I think what Blacktown do very well is they shift it wide. They use those, they switch it, they find those fullbacks in a lot of space, and it gives Manly problems because Manly also love to play in transition. And if you play against a team that have 5 defenders back, a lot of the time that can be tricky. So yeah, it's that one-on-one battle in defence. Manly, their fullbacks get drawn out to those wing-backs. It leaves Jimmy Oates and Alan Naganovich potentially exposed in the centre. If they can win those battles, and Manly kind of, their structure is well enough that they kind of don't get sent side to side by Blacktown, I think they're in with a shot. And at the end of the day, as Eric said, they just kind of need their key players to fire. They do rely on the likes of Bruno and Sayya Kambayashi and Matt Sim at times. To be fair, Matt Sim hasn't been fit. He's been out for a good chunk of the second half of the season. He's come back, probably still not 100%. Probably played a lot more minutes than he expected to play over the last couple of weeks. So the week off will do him a favour. And worth mentioning with Matt Sim, he's been involved in, I believe, the last 3 grand finals, right? Because there was
Sydney United, yes.
Yeah, so he played that day. The last time it was played at CommBank Stadium when Sydney United were defeated by Apia Leichhardt in extra time. Also, he was part of the last team to lift a grand final, to lift a championship back in 2020 when out at Marconi, Sydney United defeated Rockdale. So Matt Sim was part of the squad that day too. So potential game changer there. Hopefully he's back to full fitness. And even if he isn't, that left boot of his has the potential to change a game. If he pops up with a moment of magic, or Bruno or Sayya, Manly could be in for a good day. But yeah, it's going to be a really sort of intriguing tactical battle, and keen to see how it unfolds. And, it's always different when these teams have met 3 times already this season. And they've also seen other teams go to penalty shootouts. So if it even goes that far, which it could happen, both teams have something to study. So that's a real interesting psychological battle. So can't wait, no matter what happens.
Yeah, the advantage there of going second is you already know what I'm going to ask you, so you get to answer the question all in one. Which
Did
is
both for you.
Which
Saved
is
your breath.
Absolutely fantastic. I'll come back to you again now, Chris. So we'll wrap this up very, very shortly. It's not an easy trip to go from Manly to Parramatta. What passionate plea can you give to the Manly United fans to turn up on Saturday?
It's going to be tricky because it also happens to be grand final day for Manly Warringah's local competitions. Unfortunately, I lost my semi-final last week, so I'll be free. But grand final day is always a big day at Cromer Park. Draws a good few thousand for the local Premier League final. So there's going to be an interesting clash there. But either way, there will be hardcores that make their way out to CommBank. And it's a real local pride sort of thing, to be honest. It's the chance to see Manly be crowned, kings of the state. And for such a region such as the Northern Beaches, unlike a lot of the other teams in the NPL, Manly represent such kind of a broad geographic catchment. They represent the whole Northern Beaches. We won't own the North Shore. There's a few teams in League One and one coming up next year that will lay claim to that. But the Northern Beaches is Manly United. They're kind of based in the heart of that in Cromer, and they're just kind of a team that represent that.
Eric, what passionate plea can you give to the Blacktown fans to turn up on Saturday, even though Blacktown isn't as far of a trek as Manly is to the grand final?
I think the close distance will make it very easy for my people. So yes, please come to Parramatta. There's no reason not to. You've got a 20s game beforehand at 2:30 p.m., which Matt Sim is also involved in as a Sydney FC assistant coach. So really, grand finals apparently in this state do not happen without Matt Sim in some way. But CommBank, a wonderful venue. It's I think I was speaking to others, not a bad seat in the house especially on the top tier. I think I was talking to other people where I said this is probably one of the few venues in Australia where you could get away with broadcasting from the corner. The views are that good. It's going to be a wonderful experience, and just support your side. And if you are the kind of individual who doesn't like anything nice going to the northern beaches, then you really need to get down to CommBank Stadium on Saturday. And help your team and make sure that things are wrapped up well before the 118th minute, because as we've seen from the 119th minute onwards, that's Manly United time. So Blacktown need to get the job done before that period of the game.
That is definitely a very good shout out to get everyone to Parramatta on Saturday evening. As mentioned, you two are both going to be on the call for Clutch Radio, who also help Clutch at least help power the NPL TV broadcast, where you can watch this game if you so desire. NPL TV powered by Clutch. You do not need to. Well, you need to sign up, but you don't need to pay for it. It is a free service. So if you can't make it on Saturday evening, be sure to tune into NPL TV to catch all the action, or turn on Clutch Radio for Eric and Chris to call the game. Now, from either of you, should this go to penalties, can we expect some Craig Foster sort of commentary for you a la 2005?
It's see, as we will be doing the 20s game as well, whether we have the energy to mimic Craig Foster from November 16, 2005, that's really a wildcard. I'm not sure about that. Thankfully, for the second game, we will be helped out by the voice of Central Coast football, Peter Pryor, who will be racing down from a League One men's preliminary final on the Central Coast to join us for the first grade game. So we're delighted to have him as well. He will provide some good sense and some neutrality, and I imagine we'll be sitting between myself and Chris on the day, because that seems like the best way to go about things. So can you see you see, it's interesting because they both want a shootout, so we would both be confident should it go to that. But whether it's Dylan Iskey making the saves or the Jack Greenwood mind games, it'll be great. And if it goes to penalties, I'm not looking forward to copping a Bruno Mendes penalty, because that looks like the most annoying thing in the world. He trots up at about 50 meters an hour, just waits for you to keep it a dive, then rolls it slowly down the middle, and then winds up the opposition fans. So I loved it when he did that against Olympic. I'm not going to love it if he does that on Saturday.
And Chris, do you think you'll pull out the Craig Foster?
As seen behind me, bit of November 16. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see how the call goes. We haven't called a game together before, so I'm not sure what the tone's like over on the old radio. We can probably have a bit more fun than on the stream. So
I've got all the lines ready. Don't worry. And they're not just NPL men's references. I'm going to talk about everything.
Wish me luck, people.
And that's what we love about Eric Subijano. There's always a story, there's always a reference, regardless of where you manage to find it. But thank you very much, everyone, for sticking through this preview. I hope that my two esteemed guests, Eric and Chris, have been able to help not only convince you to come to the game on Saturday, but have given you enough information to feel that you are well prepared and can be the smartest person around the water cooler. Is that even a thing anymore? Standing around the water cooler, or has that all been abolished?
I mean, I think working from home has killed that. I just go and fill my bottles now at the water filter.
Anyway, as I said, thank you very much for joining us. Eric, I believe you will be doing the NPL New South Wales Men's Show again this week with Michael Turner. Yes. So if you want to hear more of this, as I'm sure Turner will be more than willing to entertain Eric as I have tonight, as well as probably rile them up a little bit, because that's just what they do on the NPL New South Wales show. It's a fantastic listen. You can get that wherever you get your podcast, and you can also listen to it on Clutch Radio 1. Chris, is there anything you have planned coming up for this week that you want to plug? Across anything, are there any special Twitter spaces going out that I don't know of, or anything like that?
No, just the usuals. Yeah, Socceroos socials, all of the NPL, get around the NPL final, and the Australia Cup, which has been great fun the last few weeks.
I can
Those
confirm
quarterfinals kick off. First one on Sunday, and then 3 next Wednesday, which will likely be holding another Twitter Spaces to cover those 3 concurrent kickoffs, and likely to be featuring Stephen, who I can give you a plug. You've been great value on those Twitter Spaces that we've been holding over on the Australia Cup account. So thanks for your help with that. And yeah, make sure to get around those as we react to all the games and the draws. It's been something new, something fresh, and yeah, hopefully added a bit of stuff to how much everyone's enjoying the cup. But yeah, looking forward to that. And then a couple more calls for NPL TV as we approach the end of the women's season too. Just the 2 rounds remaining of that one, and then finals.
Yes, 2 rounds, but it's certainly not short of action with rescheduled fixtures, primarily for Illawarra and Sydney Olympic to chew through over the next couple of weeks. So plenty of midweek NPL women's action as well. And as always, you can catch that on NPL TV, powered by Clutch. But this has been the Inner Sanctum's YouTube preview for the NPL New South Wales Men's Grand Final. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the rest of our wonderful content, including some fantastic player profiles. I personally loved the Cameron Devlin one that we have going out at the moment, so be sure to check that out. But for Eric Subijano and Chris Curulli, my name is Stephen Poletti, saying thank you for tuning in.